Locked On Podcast Network and BetOnline present NFL Key Predictions. The local team experts of Locked On NFL give you the inside knowledge on the biggest games of the week and betting advice from the field's leading experts. You are Locked On NFL Key Predictions.
Hey everyone, and welcome into NFL Key Predictions. I'm Jordan Black. Outside of the Monday night matchup, every game in our Week 15 slate has major playoff implications, from teams battling for wildcard spots to division titles still up for grabs. We kick things off with two teams heading in opposite directions. For the Jets, what once felt like a dream season has quickly turned into a team on the brink. Losers of 3 out of their last 4, New York faces a must-win if they want to stay in the playoff bubble for another week. Standing in their way will be the white-hot Detroit Lions, who are winners of 5 out of their last 6 games. The Lions' offense is capable of scoring 30-plus any given Sunday, so the Jets' top-end defense will have its hands full. Matt Derry from Locked On Lions joined John Butchko from Locked On Jets to preview this matchup.
All right, Matt, I think we both have a lot of respect for our opponent this week, but only one team can win this game unless you're going to pick a tie, which I don't think you'll do. But who do you think comes away victorious in the Meadowlands?
You know, this is tough. There's a part of me that says, man, the Lions are really playing well. You mentioned the Jets being banged up, and the Lions really have no fear right now. I mean, they've already gone into this same stadium and won against, what was at the time a superior opponent, at least on paper. Jets obviously 7-6, Lions 6-7. Like you said, it's kind of a pick'em game. I don't know. I'm kind of, I hate to waffle on this. I mean, maybe I'll take the home team. I have a weird feeling that this is going to come down to the kickers. And Michael Badgley's been good for the Lions. Don't get me wrong. He's been a little shaky the last couple of weeks. But I think the kicking game, something weird happening. Everything's kind of gone the Lions' way the last 6 weeks, outside of the Thanksgiving game where they lost a tight one. Are they due to lose? You look at the schedule and you go Jets, Panthers, Bears, and Packers in Week 18, which could be a bunch of, second and third stringers by that point. The game that's probably the toughest is this one. So I'll say low scoring and maybe a 21-20 Jets final as they kind of get back on the horse here at home. But nothing would surprise me in this game. The Lions winning would not surprise me at all, but I'll take the Jets by 1 in a tight one.
Yeah, I was trying to bait you into picking the tie. That might be one of these days I'm going to get somebody to pick a tie in one of these crossover Thursday shows.
Hey, there's been plenty of them, so.
I mean, that's the thing is I think this is going to be a very tight game because these teams I think are pretty evenly matched. And this game does not look as favorable for the Jets as maybe it did a couple of weeks ago. Now, when you're a Jets fan, there's no game that you should ever take for granted. I think you've been through the last decade plus what Jets fans have been through. You're always going to respect your opponent. A Lions team that's coming into the Meadowlands playing great. But, I mean, I look at this and I say, as well as the Lions are playing, and I think that they are absolutely heading in the right direction. I have a lot of respect for what they're doing. If you want to be a playoff team, it's December. This is a game you got to win at home. I worry about how banged up the Jets are, but I do think they're going to be able to run the ball on Detroit. I think that this defense is going to be able to prevent the big play. And, essentially, I think that this, in some ways, stylistically, the Jets are kind of a favorite, have a good matchup for this Lions team on offense, as well as Jared Goff, and they're playing. I wouldn't be surprised by anything that happened. In fact, I'm tempted to pick the tie, Matt, but I think I'm going to go Jets 21, Lions 17.
Yeah, I think we're right around the same spot. Win or lose, you got to be. People in Detroit are thrilled that we're even having this discussion about playoffs in year 2 of the rebuild in December. But I don't know. I got a weird feeling for this. I could be wrong. I could really be wrong because the Lions have played so well, especially offensively. But I think a few bounces, you never know in that building with the wind. And that's why I think the Jets will win, but very close.
Yeah, I would be surprised if this was a blowout either way. I mean, that's one prediction I feel pretty safe in making because I think these are both teams that are really tough outs. And I'll be honest with you, Matt. If I'm a team in the NFC at the top of them, this Detroit team is not the team I want to face. And I think the Jets would be a very tough out. I mean, I don't know how far the Jets would go, but I don't think the Jets are a team anybody would want to face in the AFC playoffs either.
Now from Locked On Bets, here's Lee Sterling.
This is Lee Sterling from Locked On Bets and Paramount Sports with your BetOnline prediction for the game between the New York Jets at home laying 1 point against the Detroit Lions. Now, the loser of this game is going to have a really tough time making the playoffs. Jets at 7-6, Detroit 6-7. Detroit, much improved offense, number 6 this year. They've skyrocketed to the top here, but the Jets will counter this game with a number 3 rated defense. They get pressure on the quarterback. They're nasty. The Jets having trouble on offense, scored just 2 touchdowns in their last 2 games. One of the games was at Buffalo, so in horrible conditions, so that can partially be explained. But the Lions have also improved their defense of late, but still ranked 31st in the NFL in defense here. So I think Detroit is improved, but also the last 3 games have been played indoors. And Jared Goff, the quarterback for Detroit Lions, one of the worst cold-weathered quarterbacks. You got to know which quarterbacks have trouble this time of the year in the NFL, late in the season, have trouble. Poor weather, throwing a wet ball. They've got small hands here. So as long as Zach Wilson, who is now going to be the number 2 quarterback for this game, doesn't have to enter, and it's just Mike White who will play the game, I feel pretty confident that the Jets will prevail. I'm going to lay the small spot to 1 point here. I think the Jets prevail 24-20. For more, subscribe to Locked On Bets wherever you get your podcasts.
The Titans are a throwback team built on a bulldozer running game and timely quarterback play from Ryan Tannehill. In a weak AFC South, one more win would bring the divisional crown and playoff berth within Tennessee's grasp. The Chargers have traded off wins and losses for the last 4 weeks and are currently on the playoff bubble behind the New England Patriots. Although every game is critical, with their final 3 opponents holding a combined 11-27-1 record, LA has a very achievable path to a playoff berth. Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans and Daniel Wade from Locked On Chargers break down this AFC bout for us.
Daniel, I'm going to put you on the spot out of the gate here. Who do you think wins this game?
It's tough, right? I mean, it's always on these crossover Thursdays, doing it before we really know the extent of the injuries. I mean, that's a very long injury list for the Titans. It's not many times I see teams that have a longer injury list than the Chargers do. So that was a little bit surprising today. But like, I mean, when the, players like Derwin James, right, and guys of that nature are kind of hanging in the balance, it's hard to say. But I think we have a good idea, at least of, 90% of the people that are going to be in this game. And I think for the Chargers, it's easy to see a variety of outcomes, right? And I think, game flow is going to be huge in this one, right? And I think them getting out to a lead or just getting a lead, a substantial lead in this game obviously plays hugely in their favor. I think I saw that Derrick Henry had 3 carries in the second half last week against the Jaguars.
Yeah, the Titans got down big, so they just kind of went away from it.
14 carries for 119 yards in the first half. 3 carries for 2 yards in the second half for Derrick Henry. You think it's important if the Chargers get a lead in this one? One of the big things they did too was the Jaguars came out of halftime. They went and scored a touchdown on their opening drive, right? That was huge. It made it a 13-point game at that point. Titans couldn't go back to Derrick Henry, right? So like at that point, if the Chargers can do that, I feel really good about it. If they will be able to do that, it's another story entirely. I like the way the offense is playing. They've had some really good opening drives recently offensively. It's really tough, though, because this is the Chargers' kryptonite. Derrick Henry is the last player they want to see coming into this, right? It was the same thing with Nick Chubb at a certain point, right? And players who are at least of that same ilk. I think the Chargers' offense with Justin Herbert having the confidence that he has is going to be a little bit too much if things don't totally fall apart for them. And I think they're just going to be able to, with a banged-up Tennessee Titans secondary, I think they're going to be able to do enough offensively to kind of overcome some of the flaws in their defense. So my prediction for this game is Chargers 33, Titans 24.
All right. I can't listen. I think that you're in a good spot here. And I actually agree with all of that analysis. And like I said at the beginning, the strengths of the Chargers line up with the Titans' weaknesses, and the Titans' strengths line up a little bit with the Chargers' weaknesses. So basically what it comes down to is who has the best chance where they're weak to stiffen up. And I think that the Chargers' run defense, when you know that it's Derrick Henry and you know that that's the goal, even bad run defenses, like Denver's run defense was 21st. Philly's run defense hasn't been awesome this year. They found a way to really limit Derrick Henry because that's the only thing that you're worried about, quite frankly. And
you're never going to take away Justin Herbert on the other side of that, right? There's no part of the game where you can't use Justin Herbert. I get what you're saying.
Exactly. So I feel like in the battle of weaknesses, the Chargers' weakness will be less punitive than the Titans' weakness. I say all that to say this, though. The Titans win games like this when it doesn't seem like they can win, when they got to go across the country, when they've lost 3 in a row, when the GM got fired, when the fan base believes that they're trash and should tank, and blah, blah. Every time that something like this happens, the Titans find a way to answer the bell and to get it right. That's what everybody praises Mike Vrabel for, is he has this team ready to go and things don't snowball on them, even with all the injuries. I think Danico Autry plays in this game, and although Treylon Burks didn't practice on Wednesday, I think there's a chance he gets out of concussion protocol and is limited the rest of the week. If those two things happen, even if Burks doesn't end up playing, I don't know what it is. This is just weird because I'm considered a pessimistic analyst when it comes to the Titans from a lot of the fan base. I just think the Titans kind of look themselves in the mirror and find a way to get the win, even with all the things we've discussed. I don't think it'll be any kind of confident win. I think it's going to be incredibly close. I think the Titans win this game 24-23.
Yeah, drag them down into the mud. And that's how the Titans win this game, I think. I mean, that's one of the things from afar I've always admired about Mike Vrabel is there's always going to be a certain level of physicality, right? And physicality is not the Chargers' strong point. And when finesse teams get smacked in the mouth with physicality, it kind of, throws everything off. So, and I think it could go one of two ways. Like, I mean, that's why I was saying a variety of outcomes is like, that seems realistic to me. I mean, Derrick Henry, I think the crazy thing is going to your point is like Derrick Henry could rush for 160 yards in this game and the Titans could still lose, right?
Yes, correct.
I mean, Justin Herbert could, throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns and the Chargers could still lose.
Yes.
Like that's just neither one of these teams are, I think, complete enough to feel great about this. I mean, a 9-point victory is the biggest, and we're going on the spot here, but that's the biggest margin of victory I've seen by the Chargers. I think that what the Chargers have to hope is that Brandon Staley last week, when you're talking about the game plan and stuff like that, seeing it come to fruition like I did, I think is a huge thing in the locker room, especially for young defenders who are getting thrust.
They can believe in it now,
When you see it go down the way it did against the Dolphins, and you're literally kind of embarrassing at certain points, a guy who's torched the league and 2 receivers that are talked about as 2 of the top 10 receivers in the league.
Right.
I think that can do something for you going down the stretch. And I think there's a little bit of that in my analysis here. I mean, the Chargers still gave up, 4.8 yards per carry last week and 100 yards, whatever. Just 2 running backs, though, it was 4.0 yards per carry, which is like by their standards is incredibly good. So we've seen some improvement. Derrick Henry's a different animal. If he gets going, if you can give the Titans a lead and you just let that dude kind of grind you out in the second half, I think the Chargers lose this game. If their offense can keep it up, they can get ahead and you make the Titans have to play catch-up mode. It might end up like the Jaguars game, right? And it just might end up like the Chargers game against the Jaguars. Like there are a variety of outcomes. I could see this game going either way, but I think that's a great point you put up. If the Titans can drag the Chargers into the mud, make it a fist fight, make it a fight in a bar parking lot, you're playing right into their strengths. And even coming across country, they're a team that can do that led by that dude.
And once again from Locked On Bets, here's Lee Sterling.
This is Lee Sterling from Locked On Bets and Paramount Sports with your BetOnline prediction for the game between the LA Chargers at home, laying the 3 points, taking on the Tennessee Titans. Now, been a rough week in Nashville. Nashville Predators in hockey lost 4 straight. Vanderbilt lost to Grambling in basketball. And then also, Tennessee Titans fired their GM, John Robinson, after they lost to the Jaguars for the first time in 9 years. So, if you're living in Nashville, last week's been a rough go. Actually, the last couple weeks for the Titans here. Still leading the division, though. But in their game last week against the Jaguars, 4 turnovers greased the skids. They were running up and down the field in the first half. those turnovers just made the difference on the scoreboard, and we're not able to overcome it. Most teams can't when you have a 4-0 turnover disadvantage, but might be a positive here. Going out on the road, going to LA. Some teams, they go out on the road and they bond it back. Mike Vrabel, 10-6, head coach for the Tennessee Titans, against the spread the last 16 times as a road underdog. So I expect them to give a much better effort than last week. Probably won't turn the ball over 4 times. Also, the last 6 LA Charger games have been decided by 1 score. So I think the wrong team's favored here. I love taking Tennessee when they're a dog here. I think they win the game outright, 26-23 over the Chargers in LA. For more, subscribe to Locked On Bets wherever you get your podcasts.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup, we've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
What's up?
Oh, I'm just compiling all the top sports scores, news, and odds so I can make the very best picks.
Me too. BetOnline.net.
Get into the action anytime, anywhere at BetOnline.net.
The championship runners-up a year ago, Cincinnati is now running a 5-game win streak into Tampa Bay, with the AFC North lead potentially on the line. Having knocked off Kansas City and Tennessee in recent weeks, the Bengals are passing all their late-season tests en route to another playoff run. Now, the Bucs are 6-7 while also leading the NFC North, and while their playoff berth was all but assumed, the resurgent Carolina Panthers are breathing down Tampa's neck, making a difficult matchup even tougher this Sunday. James Rapian and Jake Lisco from Locked On Bengals join David Harrison from Locked On Bucs for the preview of this AFC matchup.
Cincinnati Bengals at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The home team always gets spotted 3 points, right? The Buccaneers are 3.5-point underdogs, which kind of tells you the bookmakers probably think this is about a touchdown spread, give or take, that the Cincinnati Bengals are really actually have an advantage over. Over-under on this one is 44. Gentlemen, are you going to be making your score predictions here, or you want to just talk about how you think maybe this thing unfolds?
It doesn't matter. You know, I can talk about both. It is tough on a Wednesday to do that as we record this. I know it's crossover Thursday, but we're recording it on Wednesday night. And it's like, but I think I can put together a score. I certainly know who I think is going to win regardless. I think it would be silly, much like last week, to pick against the Bengals the way they're playing. Now, that doesn't mean I can't see the path for Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, because it's Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. It's Tom Brady and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and all of these guys that we saw win the Super Bowl a few years ago and storm back against the Rams, who ultimately beat this Bengals team in Super Bowl 56, right? I mean, it's a lot of those same guys. And so could this offense get going? I think it can, especially without Trey Hendrickson and some of the injuries to the Bengals. But I just think best quarterback in this game as of now, it's Joe Burrow. Best receiver, Jamar Chase. The more fluid and certainly consistent offense, which is kind of wild to say because the Bengals were so inconsistent offensively earlier in the year. But the Bucs are the lowest scoring team in the NFC South. I saw that this week, which is just wild to me, that this team led by Brady and company, just they haven't scored. And so I think that they're going to score some on Sunday at Raymond James Stadium, but it's not going to be enough. Give me the Bengals 26-23.
All right, you got the Bengals 26-23, fairly close to the prediction that I have going here. You know, again, like I said, the question is about whether or not the Buccaneers can finally perform the way that we kind of think this roster on paper should perform on the field. And you know, we're past the midway of December point by the time this game actually happens. And I don't know, man. I've been holding out hope that, you know, there was going to be a turning point. The thing that was concerning me the most during the season is at times you would hear the players themselves kind of say, we think this is a turning point. And I think turning points tend to be something we see in hindsight. They don't usually have, it's not usually something you can point to as it's happening and say, boom, there's your turning point. It's usually something you see on an NFL films production and they say that was the turning point. So that kind of was a little problematic as we seem to a point where the Bucs pull out some sort of amazing last second win or a really strong game. And everybody's kind of relaxes and says, okay, now we're good. Now that's the turning point. And then we come out and we see the Buccaneers get smashed by the San Francisco 49ers. So underdogs at home, not something that we've seen from the Bucs in the last few years, but I think it's warranted. And I think that they lose by more. And as I see the Buccaneers right now, I do think the Bengals are on a roll. I think they're one of the best teams in the NFL for a reason, and they're showing why. And I think they win this thing 31-21.
I wonder about the Buccaneers' ability to defend the run in this game. We've talked a lot about receivers on both sides. I love the Bengals' run defense when DJ Reader's on the field, and this has been discussed on Locked On Bengals ad nauseum this week. We can't stop talking about how good DJ Reader is, but I wonder without Vita Vea, who I assume is doubtful to play in this game, despite Levante David and Shaquille Barrett and some of the players that are on that defense, can they deal with a running game when they're also worried about Joe Burrow throwing the ball, especially if T. Higgins is back, especially if Tyler Boyd plays? Then it's a little bit of a pick your poison kind of game, and the Bengals have been able to run the ball for the past 5, 6, 7 weeks. So I think that'll be one to watch. I don't do score predictions. I leave that to James. That's James's wheelhouse. But I just wanted to throw out one other little quirk of this game that I think, we haven't really talked about to this point. But, if the Bengals are limited with their skill players again this week, if they can get the run game going earlier, they've shown that they can win games that way this year against worse teams. The Carolina Panthers, who you're familiar with in the NFC South, not a very good football team. But then again, who is a good football team in the NFC South right now? Let's see.
I was saying the Carolina Panthers ran the Bucs out of Charlotte. So,
and the Bengals won that game by, I don't know. It was just not close at any point.
Yeah.
So
that was the 5-touchdown Mixon game. Yeah, it was a blowout.
The massive Mixon game. So
and the other note, sorry, I just don't want to forget. AFC North 3-0 against the Bucs this year.
Wow.
So could you imagine if the one team that doesn't beat them is the Bengals? And weird things happen all the time.
That would be weird.
This Bengals team lost to the Steelers, so.
As did this Bucs team. Yeah, Vita Vea had not
participated. I can't believe you guys lost to the Browns, by the way. That was the
one. I mean, that one, you know what? So that one actually we put on the coaches, so a lot of these other ones, I mean, the coaches are taking a lot of blame, obviously, as well. But you could point to some player performances and a lot of these other losses. That Browns game, I think if Todd Bowles lets Tom do what he wants to do there at the end of that game, they come away victorious. But you mentioned the run defense, Vita Vea not practicing earlier this week. Carl Nassib, who was kind of a bright spot against San Francisco 49ers, supposed at least from an effort standpoint and kind of helping to try to keep the mojo going. Julio Jones also not participating. Jamel Dean, though, he's one of the bigger ones too, because even if they get Mike Edwards and Antoine Winfield Jr. back, but then you lose Jamel Dean, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which is still progress, but I mean it's not nearly as much progress as you want. So we got it's all Bengals here for predictions, and that's also a good plug for James's site there. Make sure you check out All Bengals for all their coverage of this. James Jarko writes for All Bengals as well, so it's a family affair here. But guys, the biggest story recapping this episode here real quick before we wrap up for Tampa Bay is their continuation of coming apart at the seams. Just as we think that they're starting to figure something out or put something together, they take another step in the wrong direction, and it just seems to be the trend this season, which unfortunately is killing a lot of enthusiasm or optimism as we get closer and closer to the end of the regular season.
Bengals 10-1 against the spread in their last 11 games too. The Bucs, I think, have the opposite record. If I'm counting correctly, I see actually it's 1-9 against the spread in their last 10 games. So there's some trends there that don't look very pretty as well.
BetOnline has the coverage of the lines ahead of this matchup.
This is BetOnline All Access. It's the Bengals and Bucs on Sunday. Here's Drew Butler, Anthony Becht, and Jonathan Casillas.
Two teams trending in different directions. The Bengals are 3.5-point road favorites, Anthony.
Yeah, take the turkey out of the oven, guys, and Brady and the Bucs are that turkey. There's nothing to hang your hat on. They can score. I like Burrow to win big here on the road. Lay those points.
This might be the end of the Tom Brady era, boys and girls. This might be it. This might be the one that sends him home and says, you know what, I'm single now. I can live my life without football and all this stress. Got to go with the Bengals on this one. Probably winning big too.
No need to overthink this one, guys. Lay to 3.5 with Cincinnati. Joe Mixon's back. Jamar Chase is finding his stride. The Bengals are playing really good football. Lay to 3.5.
Thanks, guys. Get Bengals, Buccaneers, and so much more on our full episode of All Access at BetOnline's YouTube channel. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Today's show is also brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we just know you're going to love. Find Think Like a Champion now wherever you get your podcasts. The Giants have been one of the more feel-good stories of the 2022 season, but coming off a blowout loss to the NFC leading Eagles, New York now enters Washington having won just one contest over the past 6 weeks. A return to form for Saquon Barkley, who has been under 3.5 yards per carry in 4 straight games, would keep the Giants firmly back in the wildcard picture. The Commanders are fresh off a bye and winners of 6 of their past 8 games. A team peaking at the right time. If Washington can expose the Giants' weak run defense and banged up secondary, they could all but punch a playoff berth with a win. David Harrison from Locked On Commanders and Patricia Trania from Locked On Giants preview this NFC East battle.
Huge game coming up on Sunday night. Going to be a late night, but hopefully it'll be an exciting game. And speaking of excitement, David, time for predictions. What are you thinking?
So the Commanders are favored by 4.5, according to our good friends at BetOnline, and I like that spread. So, Patricia, again, Commanders fans, Commanders media, like everybody, I think came away from that game thinking that there's some things that the Commanders could have done, even should have done, and they probably would have led to a victory. Now, but you got to give the Giants their due, right? They put 20 points on the board, and deep in your own zone, strip sack, and all this stuff doesn't help. But, the Giants earned everything that they got in that game, I feel like. So 20 points, I think it is obviously a mark that the Giants have shown that they can reach against this defense. The Washington Commanders, though, they have a missed field goal from Joey Sly, and they have a play early in the game where Taylor Heineke misses Logan Thomas. And, again, from the view of it, if he connects with Logan Thomas, it looks like Logan Thomas is walking in for a pretty easy early touchdown. They end up with a field goal on that drive, so they leave 4 points on the field. So I'm going to go a little bit symbolic here, I guess, and kind of and you know what? Let's get those points back, and I'm going to go with Washington 27 to 20. They get the 7 points that they left on the field at MetLife back in this one. The Giants get their 20 again, but the Commanders come away with the win in this one.
Wow. Okay. I got to admit, coming into this show, I went back and forth. Can the Giants pull it off? How are they going to respond? Do they have the juice to cross the finish line? I'm going to say, I think the Giants can do it. I'm going to be optimistic about it. I'm going to say it's a close game. I'm going to go 24-20 Giants. Yeah. I think Leonard Williams should be available to play. I think a lot of the guys who were listed on the Giants injury report as being questionable should be okay to go. Adoree Jackson, like I said, there's an outside chance he could play, although I'd be stunned if he does play this week. If that Giants offensive line gets its act together and they give some time to Daniel Jones to do what he needs to do, if they open up some holes for Saquon Barkley, they could get it done. So that's the one, X factor for me is what will that offensive line do? But I do think the Giants are going to be in the right frame of mind. I don't think, they're going to see this opportunity as being too big for them. And, Washington and the Giants are basically almost identical in terms of where they're at. You know what I mean? So I'm going to give the nod to the Giants. I think this time they come back and they finish business.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can see this game going either way. I think both teams, if they showed anything in a tie, it's that they can compete with each other and definitely take it, not just 4 quarters, but almost 5 full quarters worth of football. So, it could go either way. And I think, just like last time, I think 4 or 5 plays really is going to determine just how this thing ends up.
Yeah, and like you said, the crowd, you figure that into the equation. So I think, there's going to be a lot of Giant fans that show up for this game. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. Yeah. And I think, it should be a fun one. I just hope it is a competitive game. And please no overtime. Please, please, please no overtime.
Yeah, that would be nice. I am so I have a little bit of commute. I'm just gonna say I have a little bit of commute even to home games. It's a FedEx. I am getting a hotel outside of Landover this time. I'm not making the drive home that night, but yeah, even with a hotel waiting for me, I would appreciate getting out of that stadium, before the sun starts to come up.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? So, all right, it's going to be a rock'em sock'em football game, good old fashioned rivalry. The the Giants and the Commanders back in the day, they used to be one of the fiercest rivals in the NFC East of all football, really, going back to the 80s and whatnot. So let's see. We'll see how this one shakes out.
BetOnline has the coverage of the Lions ahead of this matchup.
Welcome to BetOnline All Access. It's the Giants and Commanders on Sunday night. Here's Drew Butler, Anthony Becht, and Jonathan Casillas.
It's an NFC East matchup on Sunday Night Football. The Commanders, Anthony, are 4.5-point favorites.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. Taylor Heineke has got that if factor. I'm leaning towards that. I think they'll win, but the Giants will probably keep this close, take the points.
I'm a pre-warn everybody. This is not a brain thought for me. It's from the heart, boys. I'm just letting y'all know right now. I got to go with the Giants because if they don't win this one, they're not making the playoffs. And I need them in the playoffs, boys. I need them.
Giants are winless in their last 4. Commanders unbeaten in their last 4. I think New York might be a popular play here. I'm going to lay the 4.5 with Commanders. I'm riding that Taylor Heineke train.
Well, thanks so much, guys. Get Giants, Commanders, and so much more on our full episode of All Access at BetOnline's YouTube channel. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Too little, too late. That's the phrase that most comes to mind when discussing the Packers. Green Bay has played 500 football the last 4 weeks, but with Aaron Rodgers nursing injuries and a 5-8 overall record, any shred of postseason hope will be tied to beating the Baker Mayfield-led Rams. Los Angeles simply never had a healthy foot forward in 2022 and had all but thrown in the towel. Now enter Baker Mayfield, who fresh off a 98-yard game-winning drive could be auditioning for a permanent role with the Rams. This game may not mean much in 2022, but roster moves could be made off these late-season matchups. Travis Rogers from Locked On Rams and Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers have the preview of this Monday night matchup.
All right, Travis, let's talk about what we think ultimately decides the outcome on Monday night. It is going to be, as I said, bitter cold. I've seen forecasts that include the minus sign in front of the number, certainly by the end of the night. So it is going to be cold, not just like LA cold, which is 55 and a little windy, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what it is too.
So what do you think if you say, okay, I think the game will be decided because of this matchup or this thing? What is that thing?
So I'll get to that in just 1 second. I'm going to tell you a quick story because you will appreciate this. I've only been to Lambeau Field once in my life, and it was for the NFC Championship game between the Packers and the Carolina Panthers. And I might get the year a little bit wrong. It's like 98-ish, somewhere in there.
The 97 was the year, 96 was the season.
Okay, 96 season, 90. I was there for the NFC Championship game, and you mentioned I am a California native, born and raised in Los Angeles. I've lived in 3 places in my life: Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Houston. None of them known for being particularly cold.
You got that thin blood.
So I thought I was going to die from the second I stepped out of the car. I had a great time. It was an experience I'll never forget. But to the point of what you're talking about, I do think the weather will be a factor. That even though all the players on the Rams are not native Californians, they do play their football in California. They do practice in California, and you get used to these sorts of elements out here. And you go back to somewhere like Lambeau Field at this time of year and that cold, I think that plays a big factor. But the biggest factor, I think, is, and I know we've talked a lot about him tonight, but is Baker Mayfield. Yeah. If Baker Mayfield plays anything like he did a week ago, and he was really good. It wasn't just good under the circumstances. Under the circumstances, it may be one of the great performances in NFL history, but just in a vacuum, he threw for about 230 yards. He threw a touchdown pass, and he didn't throw any interceptions. It's pretty good, especially coming in.
And that one touchdown pass, pretty important.
Very important, right? The game-winning touchdown pass to Van Jefferson there at the end. He probably won't duplicate those numbers, but he might throw an additional touchdown pass. He might throw an interception along the way. If he plays well, they got a chance. If he doesn't, you're going to see what we've seen, 9 times previously this year, where a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of very quick drives, a lot of frustrated looks on the face of Sean McVay, a lot of, almost hopelessness from the front 5 up front, and a defense that you can tell is getting a little more frustrated week after week after week, trying to keep their team in the game with extraordinary defensive performances. Going into a game, knowing that you have to hold that opponent to 14 or 17 points, that's a big ask, especially if Aaron Rodgers is on the other side. So I think those are the 2 things. I think the weather, and if Baker Mayfield can play well again, he has people in LA's attention. He really does. I didn't think that's a sentence I would be saying this year, but Baker Mayfield made an impact in LA like that, and now people are paying attention. Let's see if he can do it again.
To me, this is. Let me put a finer point on what you're saying, because I totally agree. This is about big plays.
Mm-hmm.
So if the last time the Packers played Baker Mayfield, now different team because of the makeup of the Browns, and Nick Chubb ran all over them. I think he had 196 yards in that game. Joe Barry played a lot of the two shell. It was basically mirror images of these two defenses, right? A lot of too high safeties and trying to stop the run with light boxes. Well, one team on the field on Monday is good at that, and the other team is decidedly not. So will Joe Barry take the same approach and say, okay, Baker Mayfield, you're going to have to dink and dunk your way down the field, something he is more than happy to do, or are you going to force him to make throws over the top, press these receivers at the line of scrimmage, get a little bit more aggressive, and say, actually, Baker, we dare you to make throws? On the flip side, the Rams, unlike the Brandon Staley era, and this was less true last year than it is this year, one of the worst teams adjusting for schedule in deep pass defense. It's one of those weird things. Despite the two high safeties, the deep pass defense, especially on the right side of the field, is one of those interesting things. I think that's a Jalen Ramsey thing, that teams don't throw at Jalen Ramsey a ton, but when they have this season, they've had success going over the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
Christian Watson is in the building. Can the Packers, whether it's on Jalen Ramsey or not, can they create some chunk plays? I think that is the key here, because I don't think they're going to effectively run the football. If they can create those chunk plays and keep Baker Mayfield from creating those chunk plays, I think they win. I think they win in a sort of like 27-17 kind of way. If they don't, then all of a sudden we're talking about a close game, and who knows? The weather is also interesting to me, because these are two teams playing for not much.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's barely cold, if one team gets out to a 10-point lead,
let's run the ball. Let's get the hell out.
And I mean both sides, because
right.
just because the Packers live there doesn't mean it doesn't suck if it's -4, right? So you want to get the hell out of Dodge.
Yes.
So I think that's also, like, I think starting fast for both of these teams is going to be important. If you get out and you score touchdowns on your first two drives, you're going to be feeling really good, and the other team's going to be feeling probably less good. And so how does that just psychologically affects these guys? I think that's just a little subplot to watch here.
Yeah, I think that your score prediction there, that 27-17 number, if I'm being honest, I think you're being generous. I don't think that the Rams have a ton of options, despite Mayfield's success last week, to score more than a touchdown or two. And a touchdown, I think, if you told me right now they're going to get one, they got one of the best kickers in football. They really haven't gotten a chance to deploy him all that much this year. But Matt Gay is terrific. Obviously the weather can affect that as well, and he kicks inside or quasi inside for SoFi Stadium. But he's really good. So if you get into a match where all of a sudden he can kick a couple of 50-plus yard field goals and let them hang around, maybe they can steal one at the end against the Raiders. But if this gets up into the mid to high 20s, I don't think the Rams can keep up.
Week 15 will set the table for what should be a frenzied finish throughout the NFL as the season races to the end and thrusts playoff battles onto the national stage. Each and every week, we'll continue to bring you all of the insight and analysis from across our Locked On network. Thanks so much for joining us this week. I'm Jordan Black, and this has been NFL Key Predictions.